Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Let's discuss now a new play by Girish Karnad called Agni Mattu Male, or The Fire and the Rain, 1994, which is a meta-theatrical play about love, violence and sacrifice for the community. It was written in Kannada but was immediately rendered into English for a workshop for actors at the Guthrie. The play has been performed in Hindi and English as well, and has also been made into a Hindi movie. But liberties have been taken, as the theatre scholar Aparna Dharwadkar recounts in the introduction to the second volume of Girish Karnad's collected plays, where she recounts there were that the playwrights, the directors took liberties with the play and the script when they remade the play into Hindi and English, and also made a movie out of it, much to the disapproval of Girish Karnad. The play itself takes the form of a play within a play, which is why it's a meta-theatrical play where performance itself becomes a theme in the play. Right? So the inner play, the play within the play, thematizes the outer frame play, and they both, in some sense, the distinction between reality, the outside play, the frame play, reality, and the life, the world of the inner play gets blurred and collapses by the end of the play. So there's a complete blurring of the very distinction between reality and fiction, between representation and the object being represented. And the outer play, which frames the inner play, is a modern adaptation of the tale of Yavakri. So Girish Karnad takes as the raw material of his play the story or the tale of Yavakri, which is taken from the Vana Parva of the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, Yavakri is the son of the sage Bharadwaja, who acquires knowledge of the Vedas from Indra after years of penance. He uses this knowledge that is acquired from Indra of the Vedas to molest the daughter-in-law of the sage Raibya, whom he resents, and who in turn creates a demon and a spirit in the form of his daughter-in-law to kill Yavakri. But Bharadwaja curses Raibya that he will be killed by his own son, and thus Raibya is killed by his son Paravasu, who mistakes his father, who is wearing deer skin, for a deer. Paravasu then falsely accuses his brother Aravasu for killing their father and excludes him from the fire sacrifice that they are both conducting and officiating, and where Paravasu is the chief priest. Aravasu begins his own penance by praying to the sun god, who grants him his boon that Yavakri, Bharadwaja and Raibya be brought back to life. In Karnad's modern rendition of the tale, Yavakri and Vishakha, Raibya's daughter-in-law, are lovers both before and after her marriage to Paravasu. Her own marriage is loveless because her husband, after gratifying his desire for her in the first year of their marriage, abandons her in Raibya's care to participate in the fire sacrifice that would promise him greater power. So of course the sacrifice is being conducted to actually pray for rains, because the parched land has not seen rains for years, and many people are dying, or relocating, fleeing because of the famine and the drought. Vishakha brings about Yavakri's death precisely out of her own desire to keep him alive, because when Yavakri decides to actually seek revenge against Rabia, because he resents Rabia for having been made the chief priest, and now he's unlike his father, who did not receive any recognition or validation. So he wants to actually avenge his father's insult, and so he decides to try and kill Rabia. But Vishaka then brings about Yavakri's own death, precisely because of her desire to keep him alive. So there's a cruel irony to this whole situation where Rabia has created this Brahma Rakshas, this demon that will kill Yavakri, and Vishaka, who is in love with Yavakri, despite the fact that she's been married to her husband Paravasu for 10 years, tries her best to keep Yavakri alive. And although Yavakri tells Vishaka that nothing can kill him because he has a jug full of sacred water, and even a drop of that water is enough to actually numb the demon, completely freeze him so that he cannot kill him. Vishaka does not trust or have any faith in his power, and she ends up emptying the entire jug of water, and there's not a drop of water left. And then she pleads Yavakri to go and take refuge in his father's hermitage, which is the only place where he can be safe from the demon. But of course, as tragedy would have it, he is rushing towards his father's hermitage when Andaka, the blind Shudra man in the play, the Shudra character who's blind in the play, is unable to recognize Yavakri's footsteps. And catches hold of him as he is guarding Yavakri's father's hermitage. And in the meanwhile, the demon, the Brahma Rakshas, overtakes Yavakri and impales him with a spear. So he is killed. Paravasu in turn kills his father deliberately, unlike the tale in the Mahabharata where he accidentally kills his father, mistaking him for a deer. Here, Paravasu hates his father, resents his father, and he kills his father deliberately out of hatred, and finally himself chooses death at the yajna to expiate himself from the act of patricide. The Rakshasa returns to the spirit world as he is released from the bondage of life and death with Aravasu's compassion and forgiveness, and with Aravasu's intervention, he is freed of the bondage of life and death. There's also a parallel story that Karna develops in the play, which is the love affair between Aravasu and Nittilai, a tribal woman. While the other male characters of the play, Raibhya, Paravasu and Yavakri, represent the power of and violence of ascetic Brahmanism, Aravasu is caught in between the world of the Brahmin and the world of the non-Brahmin, of the Shudra, between the sacred and the profane, the sacred world of Vedic Brahmanism and the profane world of the non-Brahmin, of the tribal, of the Shudra. The opposition between the world of the Brahmin and the world of the Shudra is mapped onto the opposition between the mind and the body, between the life of discipline and ritual sacrifice and emotion. Right. So therefore, Brahmins are equated with this ruthless greed for power and violence, and the Shudra is associated with compassion, compassion and love for humanity. While Raibhya and Yavakri and Paravasu have lost the legitimacy of their power through their acts of violence and killing, Aravasu has a redemptive function to play in the play, where he works for the greater good of his community, even at the cost of losing Nittilai. Nittilai pays with her life while she's trying to rescue Aravasu from the sacrifice, and so he loses her, and Vishaka herself is chastised in the play but not punished for transgressing the boundaries of female chastity, because she has an affair with she continues to have an affair with Yavakri even after she's married, and Nittilai loses her life for choosing Aravasu over her husband. So Nittilai is actually married off to her tribal, a man from her own tribe, because Aravasu loses his opportunity to get married to her because he is busy he is stuck, carrying out the final rites for Yavakri after he is killed, and so he loses the opportunity to actually arrive on time at the tribal's council of elders meeting, where he was supposed to marry Nitilai. The distinction between the play and the play within the play is blurred and collapsed by the end when Paravasu pollutes the sacrificial area with his act of patricide, and Aravasu, who assumes the role of Vrithri, which is the half demonic son of Brahma. Brahma has three sons. One is Indra, one is who's a divine son, one is Vishwarupa, who is his son through a mortal woman, and Vrithri is Brahma's son with that he had with a demoness. Right. So Aravasu plays the role of Vrithri in the play within the play, and he wears a mask in the play to play the role of Vrithri, but ends up bringing the mask to life and ends up destroying the sacrificial altar and killing Paravasu. Right. So the mask comes to life, and there's no longer a distinction between fiction and reality, between the world of the play outside the play and the play within the play. Nitilai pays with her own life because she cannot stop herself from rescuing Aravasu from the destruction of the Yajna. And finally, Aravasu sacrifices his own happiness with Nitilai for the sake of the Brahma Rakshasa's release from life and death. So now let us just look at the details of the play. As I mentioned earlier, the whole idea of performance is thematized in the play. It becomes a chief theme of the play, which in some sense is also an expression of the sacred. It's one of the expressions of the sacred is performance itself, because it legitimizes the divine origins of drama and theatre from Bharata's Natya Shastra onwards, and it also acknowledges and validates the lower caste identity of the actor in the hierarchy of caste. So the actor is considered to be a lower caste person simply also by virtue of acting, because when Aravasu decides to take on the life of an actor, decides to become an actor, his brother Paravasu forbids him from entering the sacrificial arena, because he has polluted his own Brahminical identity, and he's polluted his community by becoming an actor. So if you look at the opening stage directions of the play, they're quite elaborate. It says that it has not rained adequately for nearly 10 years. This is the prologue, and the prologue and the epilogue frame the inner play. Right. So you have a prologue which is situated at that point in time when Aravasu is on the verge of acting in the play within the play as Vrithri, and he's searching for Nitilai, who cannot be found in the audience. The play also ends with an epilogue where the Yajna has been destroyed, and towards the end there is a complete collapse between the play and the play within the play. So in the initial prologue, the description of the stage directions are like this. So there has been a drought for nearly 10 years, which has caused famine. And there's been a 7-year-long fire sacrifice to the Lord Indra, who is the god of rains, to propitiate him in order to enable rains in a land that has been parched with years of drought. Fire burns in the center of step-like brick altars. There are several such altars, at all of which priests are offering oblations to the fire while singing the prescribed hymns in unison. The priests are all dressed in long, flowing, seamless pieces of cloth and wear sacred threads. The king, who is the host, is similarly dressed but has his head covered. Paravasu is the conducting priest. He will be called the chief priest, since he is the most important of them all. It is his responsibility to see that there are no errors, either of omission or of commission, in the performance of the sacrifice. He is about 28. It is an impressive panorama. The Brahma Rakshasa, a Brahmin soul trapped in the limbo between death and rebirth, is moving around at the sacrificial precincts, though no human eye can see him. So the Brahma Rakshasa already exists. He is a Brahmin soul that's been trapped between death and rebirth, and is constantly hovering around the sacrificial area. The afternoon session is over. The priests begin to disperse. A courtier enters with the actor manager. The latter is made to stand at a distance from the fire sacrifice, since as an actor he is considered low-born. The courtier rushes into the protected enclosure of the fire sacrifice and talks to the king. The priests surround them. There is a heated discussion. And they're discussing the possibility of having a play, to which the king is quite shocked and will not allow it. And when they discover that Aravasu is going to play a role in the play, then all the Brahmins, actually all the priests, are quite shocked. that a Brahmin is going to be acting. So, the actor manager says to the Brahmins that, "Sirs, as is well known to you, Brahma, the Lord of all creation, extracted the requisite elements from the 4 Vedas and combined them into a 5th Veda, and thus gave birth to the art of drama." So, of course, this is the validation, the acknowledgement of drama as the 5th Veda. It's an acknowledgement of the divine origins of drama. He handed it over to his son Lord Indra, the god of the skies. Lord Indra in turn passed on the art to Bharata, a human being, for the gods cannot indulge in pretense. So, if Indra is to be pleased and bring to an end this long drought which ravages our land, a fire sacrifice is not enough. A play has to be performed along with it. If we offer him entertainment in addition to the oblations, the god may grant us the rains we are praying for. Right? So, this need to enact, to perform along with a fire sacrifice to propitiate the god of rains, Indra. And of course, the courtier is very clear that Aravasu should not be admitted into the sacrificial arena, because he is also going to be acting in the play, which is the role of a lower caste person. And of course, the Aravasu sends a message with the actor manager, which says, "A message from a brother. Dear elder brother," this is a message from Aravasu to his older brother Paravasu, which says, "The sons of Bharata were the first actors in the history of theatre. They were Brahmins, but lost their caste because of their profession. A curse plunged them into disrepute and disgrace. If one values one's high birth, one should not touch this profession. And I accepted this, but today I am a criminal. I have killed my father, a noble Brahmin. I already stand tarnished. I may now become an actor. This follows from your own words, so please do not bar the way now." Right? So, here we must remember that Aravasu performs the function of redeeming the sin that his brother Paravasu committed of killing their father. Right? So, he performs the expiatory rites of redeeming his father's death at his brother's hands, and he uses this opportunity to actually seek the possibility of freedom from caste, freedom from Brahminical Hinduism, from caste, and the freedom to actually marry the woman he loves, which is Nittilai, a tribal girl. So, by embracing a stigma of patricide, of killing, which he does not commit himself, Aravasu then gains the freedom of acting, of performing, of propitiating the Lord Indra, and of also redeeming his brother's sin of patricide. And not, of course, to mention also the fact that he hopes that he will be able to live happily with Nittilai. But as the play is about to begin, Aravasu is hoping that Nittilai is in the audience watching the play. Right? So, he's happy when the courtier and actor manager tell Aravasu that Paravasu has given him permission to act in the play. He says he's agreed, Nittilai, he tells himself. He'll be there to watch the play. But where are you? Why aren't you here? Nittilai, I'm going to act on stage. I hope you're watching. Please watch. The play is about to begin. Yes, after all these years, it's going to happen. But you know, and brother knows, and I know that this isn't the real thing. This is a fiction borrowed from the myths. The real play began somewhere else, a month ago. A month? Was it really that recent? It seems ages and ages of darkness ago. You and I were going to get married, begin a new life, and I had to meet the elders of your tribe. Right? So, there's a flashback at this point, which goes back to the point when they were in love, and Aravasu was going to meet the tribal council of elders to ask Nittilai for a hand in marriage. And Nittilai in Act 1 tells Aravasu that she is hopeful that the elders of her tribe will agree to the marriage, because it's not often, as she says, that they get a Brahmin groom. Right? So, they may actually think it's a matter of honor to get their daughter married to a Brahmin groom. And Aravasu says that he is now free to, as he says, I'm about to jettison my caste, my people, my whole heritage for you. Right? So, Nittilai, of course, is initially modest, and she does not wish to be touched by a man before the marriage. And so, she says, I cannot be touched by you. And Aravasu says, I'm actually giving up, renouncing my entire caste, my people, my whole heritage for you. Can't you forget a minor custom for my sake? And Nithile says, this is the only custom that's actually worth observing, because I actually retain my modesty, my reputation, so that there can be no mishap before our marriage. Aravasu says, all these days I couldn't touch you because Brahmins don't touch other castes. Now you can't touch me because among hunters, girls don't touch their betrothed. Are you sure someone won't think of something else once we're married? Then later on, Aravasu again expresses his desire for sheer happiness and joy to be with Nithile. He has none of the ambitions, the spiritual ascetic ambitions that his brother and father and Yavakri have, his cousin Yavakri has. He says, I'll never be learned like father or uncle. I shan't ever conduct the royal sacrifice like Paravasu or perform penance like cousin Yavakri. All I want is to dance and sing and act and be with Nithile. It doesn't matter a flake of cow dung to my father whether I'm alive or dead. My sister-in-law lives wrapped up in a world of her own that leaves only my brother. Right? So he's not concerned with these temporal ambitions of power, and he's not concerned with the sacrifice, so he's free to do what he likes. And Andaka, who is the blind Shudra in the play, asks him what would happen if Paravasu, his brother, forbids the marriage. And Aravasu says, I'll tell him, I can't give up Nithile. She's my life. I can't live without her. I'd rather be an outcast. Right? So he's willing to actually sacrifice his caste community for his love for Nithile. And Nithile, of course, is very concerned, hoping that they will get married, because marriage is the only guarantee that she and her tribal community has, that she will not be misled and betrayed by a man who is willing to marry her before the marriage. Right? Then through Andaka, Nithile and Aravasu learn of Yavakri's penance, that Yavakri performs these self-mortifications and penance for years to win the favor of Indra. 10 years, Andaka says, 10 years of rigorous penance, and still Lord Indra would not oblige. Finally, Yavakri stood in the middle of a circle of fire and started offering his limbs to the fire. First his fingers, then his eyes, then his entrails, his tongue, and at last his heart. That's when the god appeared to him, restored him limbs, and granted him the boon. Andaka later on says, on 115, every Brahmin on the face of this earth wants to gain spiritual powers, but few succeed. In my lifetime, I have known only two who did. Your uncle, as in referring to Aravasu's uncle, your uncle and your father Aravasu, but they got their knowledge from human gurus by diligent study. Yavakri has gone beyond even them. He received his knowledge from the gods, direct. Your uncle was sure he would fail. How he tried to dissuade the boy from taking on this ordeal. But I said to him, Master, let him go to the jungle. You don't know your son. I do. I brought him up on this lap of mine. He will succeed in anything he tries. You mark my words. So Andaka is raised Yavakri from the time he was a child, and he is convinced that Yavakri is determined to win greater powers and to bless the land with rain through his harsh, severe austerities and penance to win Lord Indra's favor. And now he has come back. So unlike Arvasu's father and uncle, who won their spiritual power who gained the spiritual power through human gurus, Yavakri wins it through the sheer determination and arrogance of his penance, of his tapasya, to actually acquire power, spiritual power from Indra himself. And Nithile is one of those characters embodying the profane, non-Brahmanical world of the tribes, the tribal world of the tribes, of the Shudras, who constantly questions the ritual discipline and form of ascetic Brahmanism. She says, their fire sacrifices are conducted in covered enclosures. They mortify themselves in the dark of the jungle. Even their gods appear so secretly. Why? What are they afraid of? Look at my people. Everything is done in public view here. The priest announces that he'll invoke the deity at such and such a time on such and such a day. And then there, right in front of the whole tribe, he gets possessed. and the spirit answers your questions. You can feel it come and go. You know it's there, not mere hearsay. So here in the tribal community, you have a man who gets possessed, who becomes the conduit, the medium through which the earthly world communicates with the spirit world. Unlike the world of Vedic Brahmanism, where everything happens as a secret ritual that is only privy to by Brahmins. You have a fire sacrifice that happens in private, within the presence, in the presence of the king and the Brahmins. So this is the contrast that she draws between the two worlds, the difference, the utter difference between the world of the Brahmin and the world of the tribe, of the tribal. Nitile says, my point is, since Lord Indra appeared to Yavakri and Indra is their god of rains, why didn't Yavakri ask for a couple of good showers? You should see the region around our village, parched. Every morning, women with babes on their hips, shrunken children, shriveled old men and women gather in front of my father's house. For the gruel he distributes. No young people, they have all disappeared. And father says all the land needs is a couple of heavy downpours. That will revive the earth. Not too much to ask of God, is it? So she's very practical. She says, what stopped Yavakri from asking Indra for rains so that they can overcome the famine and the drought that has ravaged the land for decades? So she is more interested in actually using divinity, God, and divine power to save her people from starvation and death. But Andhaka says, half agreeing, that these divine powers should not be used to solve day-to-day problems. They are meant to lead to inner knowledge. Right? So there's obviously a distinction being made between inner knowledge, inner spiritual knowledge, self-knowledge, absolute infinite knowledge, and power that's required to actually help humanity. Right? So you have the sacred, the divine, the ritual, and human individual ambition, opposed to power that can be used, divine power, the power of humanity that can be used to secure humanity's own welfare. Nitile later on says, actually I want to ask Yavakri two questions. Can he make it rain? And then, can he tell when he's going to die? Just two. What is the point of any knowledge if you can't save dying children and if you can't predict your own moment of death? Right? So she's the voice of secular humanism, which is completely crushed and killed by the end of the play. And of course, Yavakri makes an appearance later on in another part of the stage, which is the hermitage of Raibhya, the father of Aravasu. Vishaka is about 26, but she does not look like she is happy. I mean, she looks completely sullen and haggard, is the description. She was once an attractive woman, but now she is trapped in a loveless marriage. Her husband has long left her to be the chief priest of the fire sacrifice, and she's in her father-in-law Raibhya's care. And she just spends her day through the daily rituals of collecting water in a pot when Yavakri appears, and she is quite surprised and shocked to see him after so many years. And he makes advances at her, and she's unable to stop him. She does feel secretly pleased and happy to see him after so many years. And Yavakri doesn't seem to have changed at all from his 10 years of penance. He, in his pursuit of universal knowledge, he is still susceptible to his own lust for Vishaka. Again, like Nitile, Vishaka is another woman in the play who questions the hypocrisy of Brahminical discipline and asceticism. Because these men have obviously not been able to completely sublimate their desires, their greed into asceticism, into penance, because they're still the same people. They're still overcome by lust and greed for power. Yavakri says, for a start, it's not as easy as you think to actually get universal knowledge from the god. It's not just a question of performing austerities in the name of a god and then winning universal knowledge. It's much harder than that. So he describes his arduous life in the forest. He says life in the jungle is sheer hell. Flies, giant ants, beetles, pests, leeches, and attacking at the suspicion of moisture, vipers lurking in bowls of dust, the relentless heat, not demons but mosquitoes to torture you. One would expect the appearance of a god to be a shattering experience, concrete, indubitable, almost physical. But though I think Indra came to be several times, I was never certain. Then the first time he appeared, he said, "No, Yavakri, You can't master knowledge through austerities. It must come with experience. Knowledge is time, it is space. You must move through these dimensions. I said, no, I must have it. Grant me all knowledge. He laughed and said, you're being silly. That's it. Common dialogue. Not very profound. And when the god disappeared, nothing was left behind to prove he had never been there. I looked around. The same old black scorpion, the same horned chameleon, the shower of bird shit around me. So it was all a hallucination caused by something I'd eaten that morning? Or was it fever working on my brain? So I go on, another year, perhaps two. Then the god comes again. Why are you being so stubborn? He chides. You can't cross a full stream on a bridge of sand, and so on. So he is, Yavakri is relentless in his pursuit for greater power from Indra, right? And Indra says that the only way you can actually gain power is through experience. You're not a god, you're a human being. But Yavakri refuses to listen, right? He's determined to win his boon. But Vishaka is in complete contrast to Yavakri, because she is only concerned with the fact that she, like the Shudra, like the tribal, is outside the realm of Brahminical masculinity, because she has spent her life abandoned, neglected. She has lost her youth, her desirability. She seems to have even lost her her will to live. And she's not concerned with these male, Brahminical male ambitions of power. And she also recounts how after the first year of marriage, when Paravasu gratified her, sought sensual gratification from Vishaka, and then abandons her in his father's care to become the chief priest of the fire sacrifice to the rain god. Vishaka tells Yavakri about how after the first year of marriage, Paravasu tells her that on the first day of the second year of the marriage, he said, enough of that, we now start on our search. And then it wasn't that I was not happy, but the question of happiness receded into the background. So for Vishaka, happiness is just being happy with the husband. But for the husband, he wants to seek absolute knowledge, right? He used my body and his own body like an experimenter, an explorer, as instruments in a search. Search for what? I never knew. But I knew he knew. Nothing was too shameful, too degrading, even too painful. Shame died in me, and I yielded. I let my body be turned inside out as he did his own. I had a sense he was leading me on to something. Mystical, spiritual, we never talked. Then one day he received the invitation from the king to be the chief priest of the fire sacrifice, and he left. The site of the fire sacrifice is only a couple of hours away from here. But in all these 7 years, he hasn't come back. So he's only interested in pursuing, in furthering his own Brahminical power, while Vishaka has been left abandoned and trapped in a loveless marriage. And so she blames both Yavakri and Paravasu of being these typical Brahmin men who are only interested in their own selfish ends. And later on, Yavakri actually meets Nithile as she's talking to Aravasu. In fact, later on, Aravasu and Nithile almost discover the affair that Yavakri is having with Vishaka, as they are secretly talking to each other along the banks of a river, when Aravasu walks in upon them, but at the last moment Vishaka escapes, but her clothes are torn and she's completely dirty with mud and filth and slush on her back, and he sees Yavakri pursuing her. And on the way, Yavakri sees Nithile and contemptuously curses her. When Nithile, he gets to know, he obviously knows through his divine knowledge that she wants to know when he will die, and so he says that I don't know when I'll die, but I promise you this, you'll be dead within a month, right? So Yavakri actually foretells Nithile's death. Later on, Aravasu does not tell Raibhya, his father, about the affair between Yavakri and Vishaka, although he discovers it. He learns, somehow he wrests the secret out of Aravasu, and he realizes that there's an affair going on between the two, and he's very disgusted with his daughter-in-law and calls her a whore for having an affair with another man. But he stops short of cursing her, and he decides that it's Paravasu's responsibility to actually take care of discipline his wife. So Vishaka is not punished, but she's chastised for her sexual transgression. And later on, Raibya decides to actually avenge the insult to his family, to his reputation, by creating a Brahma Rakshas. So he invokes a Brahma Rakshas, and he tells the Rakshas to actually kill Yavakri. Right? He says, Vishaka, he tells his daughter-in-law Vishaka, go and tell your lover, I accept his challenge. I shall invoke the Kritya and send a Brahma Rakshasa, a demon soul, after him. Let Yavakri save himself. He need only go and hide in his father's hermitage. I love my brother and will not desecrate his altar. Let Yavakri cower in there like a dog. If he steps out, he'll be dead. So the only place where Yavakri can be free is at his father's hermitage, and his father is Raibya's brother. So since Raibya actually respects his brother and the sanctity of his hermitage, that's the only space where Yavakri can be safe. And he says that if Yavakri can keep himself alive for 24 hours, he will accept defeat and enter the fire. So Vishaka is intent on saving Yavakri's life, and they go in search of him. Arvasu is unable to find him, but Vishaka sees him, discovers him, murmuring incantations, sitting cross-legged with his kamandulu, his water jug in front of him. Vishaka runs in panting, and while Yavakri continues meditating. And she calls out to Yavakri, who opens his eyes and acknowledges Vishaka's presence. And Vishaka tells him that her father-in-law has invoked the Kritya spell to engage his full powers, and that he has created a Brahma Rakshas to actually kill Yavakri. And Yavakri is not scared; he's not daunted, because he has his magical water in his jug, and he is convinced that a drop of this water will render the demon powerless. But Vishaka is not convinced, and she ends up pouring the water into the earth, and Yavakri is betrayed, and then he starts panicking, and he rushes towards his father's hermitage, because that's the only space where he can be safe. So this is, of course, a tragic, ironic twist in Karnad's rendition of the original tale, where Vishaka can only keep Yavakri alive by enabling his death. So Yavakri rushes, but then Andaka, who has been placed by Aravasu on guard at Yavakri's father's hermitage, does not recognize, ironically does not recognize Yavakri's footsteps, stops him, but in the process the Brahma Rakshas overtakes Yavakri and impales him with a spear, killing him on the spot. So Act 1 ends with Yavakri's death. In Act 2, Raibya is horrified to see that his son Paravasu has left the sacrifice just a month before its completion, having heard of his wife Vishaka's sexual misdemeanor. Vishaka talks to Paravasu after many years for the first time, and he also meets Aravasu, and he gives Aravasu his permission to act in the play. It is here that Paravasu tells Vishaka. Right. In fact, Vishaka again compares Paravasu to Yavakri, and he says that both of you resemble each other because both of you go away and whenever you feel like it. Right. So she accuses both of them of using her, right, for their own sensual gratification. Paravasu says one can practice austerities like a fool, Yavakri, to coerce the gods to bend to one's will, stand in a circle of fire, torture oneself. So many techniques, all equally crass, to make the gods appear. And when they give in, what do? Extend the begging bowl, give us rains, cattle, sons, wealth, as though one defined human beings by their begging. I despise it. I went because the fire sacrifice is a formal rite. Right? So Paravasu describes the fire sacrifice as a formal, structured rite. It involves no emotional acrobatics from the participants. The process itself will bring Indra to me, and if anything goes wrong, there's nothing the gods can do about it. It has to be set right by a man, by me. That's why when the moment comes, I shall confront Indra in silence, as an equal. For that, it is essential that one shed all human weakness, be alone, absolutely on one's own to face that moment, become a diamond, unscratchable, right? So Paravasu's desire is to become absolutely all-powerful and not just use prayers, not just use practices, austerities as a means of gaining access to the gods and favors from them, right? So he wants to actually overcome his human weakness and become a god in his own right. So there is no room for emotional attachment in these fire sacrifices, right? It's an absolutely structured, disciplined rite which goes beyond personal obligations of emotions and attachment. And Vishaka does not understand this entire obsession with absolute power. She says that what's so wrong in being human? What is wrong with leading a human life where one is just happy with what one has and with one's attachments and love for humanity? And she says later on that that even though Yavakri and you used me and humiliated me for your own lust, at least Yavakri was warm and gentle. Right? For a few minutes, he made me forget the wizened body, the scratchy claws, and the blood cold as ice, and he paid for it with his life. And that's when the Raibhya, her father-in-law, appears, and Paravasu here deliberately kills his father with an arrow out of his hatred for his father. He kills his father because his father killed Yavakri to disturb him in the last stages of the sacrifice. So he kills his father and he returns to the sacrificial altar. Meanwhile, Aravasu, who has been busy performing the final rites for Yavakri, who has been killed, is late by half an hour for the meeting with the tribal elders, where he's supposed to marry Nithile. But since he's late, the council of elders has left, and he is very upset that he has lost his opportunity to actually marry Nithile, who is then promptly married off to another man from her own tribe. And on the way back, he discovers that his father has been killed, and Paravasu tells lies to him, saying that he mistook their father for a wild animal and shot him with an arrow. But Aravasu now has to perform the rites for their father, the rites of penitence, and Paravasu delegates the responsibility of performing these rites of penitence to his brother, while he returns immediately to the sacrificial altar. And there later on, he meets the Brahmarakshas, and Brahmarakshas, the Brahmarakshas who has performed his role of his function of killing Yavakri, now seeks to be freed from the bondage of life and death, and begs Paravasu to meet the gods, to encounter the gods in his sacrifice, and request that he be released from the bondage of life and rebirth. But Paravasu refuses. He does not know how he can help the Brahmarakshas. And when Aravasu comes to the sacrificial area after completing the funeral rites, Paravasu wrongly accuses Aravasu of having killed their father, for which the Brahmins refuse to let him come in. They take a couple of soldiers take hold of him and drag him away. Act 3 begins with Aravasu lying in the outskirts of the city, with Nithile sleeping next to him. Right? And when he wakes up, he is frightened, not knowing where he is, but he's very happy to see Nithile. And he's incredulous at the sight of Nithile, and Nithile tells him that she escaped from her husband and to rescue Aravasu. Nithile is also willing to choose Aravasu over her husband, and she says, Aravasu, when I say we should be together, I don't mean we should have to live together like lovers or like husband and wife. I have been vicious enough to my husband. I don't want to disgrace him further. Let's be together like brother and sister. You marry any girl you like. Only please, Aravasu, spare a corner for me. So she is willing to think outside the fold of marriage, to actually probably even continue living with her husband, while at the same time having some kind of relationship with Aravasu, even if it is not one of marriage or a romantic relationship outside marriage. And Aravasu is determined to actually avenge the death of his father. And so he says, he tells Nithile, I can't help it. I want to make them all pay. Yavakri, father, Paravasu. It's a conspiracy, don't you see? It's all planned because I wanted to marry you, because I was ready to reject my caste, my birth. Can't you see it? I wanted to strike out on my own. So first a corpse curls itself around my ankles, Yavakri. Then its father, bodies drenched in blood, like rats that pour out during the plague and die vomiting blood. So he is convinced, he is determined to actually avenge their killings. But Nitalai tries to dissuade him from perpetuating the spiraling cycle of violence and bloodshed. And Nitalai says, leave that to the gods, Aravasu. Look at your family. Yavakri avenges his father's shame by attacking your sister-in-law. Your father avenges her by killing Yavakri. Your brother kills your father. And now you, in your turn, want vengeance. Where will it all end? Aravasu, so what do I do? Sit in a corner with my hands crossed like a eunuch? Nitalai, do that. Better that than become the man you hate. Right? So she tries to convince him to not perpetuate further violence and bloodshed. The actor manager tells Aravasu, any fool can see that you two belong to different worlds. Anything's possible in these troubled times, so I won't comment. But your name's on every tongue in this town and they are mostly trying to spit it out. I didn't save your life, she did. I only found you. You were lucky that she turned up soon after, and it's she who's been nursing you, mopping up your vomit, wiping your bottom, like a baby. I'm grateful to her because my babies were starving when she came, and now they get a bite to eat every day. When she gets the food from, where she gets the food from, I don't know, but she knows the woods. So obviously Nitalai is a symbol of compassion. She's someone who is able to access food from the woods, the forest that she knows intimately. We would have moved out of this town the day the old man died, except that we have become dependent on her for food, for nursing, for laughter. We're just waiting to leave with her, but she won't budge till you're better. Then later on, Aravasu decides to actually act in the play, and she decides he wants to play the role of Vritra, right? And Nitalai tells the actor manager that her father and brother and husband will also be there to watch the performance. So they're obviously in search of her, and they're willing to do anything to get Nitalai back. So she's very scared that maybe her husband might actually end up killing Aravasu, right? and killing her too, and she doesn't want to die. So the whole act of performing in the play itself is an act of exposure to the tribal community. The actor manager, of course, is only interested in the performance happening because that's his only source of income and livelihood. So that's the only way that he says, my children will sleep on a full stomach for another 2 months if this play happens. So when Aravasu decides to play the role of Vritra and not Indra, Nitalai says, I'm glad that you're not playing Indra. I don't like that god of yours. He's immortal. When someone doesn't die, can't die, what can he know about anything? He can't change himself. He can't create anything. I like Vritra because even when he is triumphant, he chooses death. I always wonder, if flowers didn't know they were to fade and die, would they ever blossom? Right. So again the contrast between immortality, between immortal gods like Indra, who can never change because they can't die, right? Who can't create anything because they can't die. But it's far more glorious, far more joyous to play a mortal character who can create, who can show compassion for humanity, who can create transformations and change, and who can choose death. Right? They use masks in the play, and Arasu wears the mask of Vritra and the demon, and the actor manager warns him, saying that you should surrender to the mask, but surrender and pour your life into it. But remember, once you bring the mask to life, you have to keep a tight control over it. Otherwise, it will try to take over, right? It will begin to dictate terms to you, and you must never let that happen, right? So there's always a risk that if he surrenders to the mask may actually take over him and acquire a life of its own, which is exactly what happens in the play. So in the play, of course, there are these three characters, Indra, Lord Indra, and his half brothers, Vritra and Vishwarupa. Vishwarupa is Brahma's son with a human mortal woman, and Vritra is Brahma's son with a female demon. And Indra is very insecure about Vishwarupa because Vishwarupa has won the praises of everyone for his wisdom and his gentleness. And Indra feels extremely insecure and vulnerable because he feels like an eclipsed moon. Right? Right? He feels like his glory has been eclipsed by Vishwarupa, and so he wants to kill Vishwarupa, and therefore Vritra offers to protect Vishwarupa from Indra. So the two are inseparable because they are always trying to save each other from Indra's wrath. So Indra organizes a fire sacrifice in honor of Brahma, and he invites all the gods and the men to the sacrifice. And he also invites Vishwarupa to the sacrifice, but forbids Vritra from coming because he is a Rakshasa, a demon. So of course the play itself is an allusion to the actual play, the play outside the play, an allusion to the relationship between Aravasu, Paravasu and their father Raibya. And ultimately, of course, Indra betrays Vishwarupa and he kills Vishwarupa, and Vritra is very upset at his brother's death. And he enters the enclosure and he sees Vishwarupa is dying, and he is furious at Indra's treachery, and they have a duel. And in the fight, the actor manager is playing Indra and Aravasu is playing Vritra, and he completely surrenders to the mask, which actually brings Vritra's character to life. And the very distinction between fiction and reality is completely collapsed in this moment, where he says, "You can elude me, Indra, but you can't escape me. Even if you fly like a falcon across 99 rivers, I'll find you. I'll destroy you. I'll raise your befouled sacrifice to the ground. I'll burn down the sacrifice." And that's when Aravasu begins destroying the sacrifice. And the actor manager says, no, not that. Stop him. Stop him for God's sake. And Aravasu says, "I'm a Brahmin. If you try to stop me, I'll kill myself. And the sin of killing a Brahmin will be on your heads. I'm a Rakshasa, and I'll kill anyone who tries to stop me." And the actor manager is trying very hard to get the mask off Aravasu's face, which is what Nithilai does. Nithilai struggles and she finally manages to remove the mask from Aravasu. And the Brahmins are furious because the entire sacrifice is being desecrated by the tribals and Aravasu, who has gone to destroy the sacrifice just at the moment of its completion. And Paravasu, who is watching the entire play, realizes that the play is an allusion to him, and he tries to stop the destruction by he knocks Aravasu down, he pins him to the ground, and the husband, Nithilai's husband, pulls out a knife, grabs Nithilai by her hair and slashes her throat. Right? Aravasu gets up, but it's too late to save Nithilai, who tried to intervene to save him from the fury of the mask that took over. And Indra's voice can be heard, right, in the skies, and he tells Aravasu, "Do not grieve. We are pleased with you. Ask for any boon, and it shall be granted." Right. So Aravasu asks that Nithilai be brought back to life. So Indra is pleased by the way Aravasu challenged Indra and pursued him in the play, and then he says that he asks him to ask for a boon, and he says, Indra says, it's no big deal bringing Nithilai back to life, but once the wheel of time starts rolling back, it will bring back everyone to life, all those who have been killed. Paravasu, Yavakri and Nithilai, they will all be brought back to life. And Yavakri and Aravasu says, yes, let them all be brought back to life. But Indra says that if they're all brought back to life, then there may be a repetition of the same tragedies. And then Aravasu says that may not happen, because now, having lived this life of sacrifice, I have grown wiser, right? And I will not commit the same mistakes again. And Indra's on the verge of granting him the boon of bringing back Paravasu, Yavakri, and his father to life, when the Brahmarakshas intervenes and begs Aravasu to release him from the bondage of life and death. And Aravasu is on the verge of relenting out of his sheer compassion for the Brahmarakshas. But Indra says there's another consideration, that if the wheel of time must roll back, Nithilai will return to life, but it must roll forward for the Brahmarakshas to be released from the bondage of life and rebirth. So you can't have it both ways. You can either bring Nithilai back to life, or you can release the Brahmarakshas from the bondage of life and rebirth, and that's exactly what Aravasu chooses to do. So as the Brahmarakshas says that you're a human being, you are capable of mercy, so the Aravasu actually takes mercy on him and releases him from the cycle of life and death. So therefore, Nitila actually ends up becoming a scapegoat to the rivalries between these different Brahmin men, and also Aravasu's own desire to seek the welfare of his community. And so that's exactly how the play ends, with Nitile living a life as tormented as the Brahma Rakshas, where the Brahma Rakshas is resurrected and released from the cycle of life and rebirth. But Nitile is now living the tormented life of a spirit, and this is exactly how the play ends.